Great. And now I would love to turn this over to Hugh McGuire, who is the founder and CEO of Pressbooks and the executive director of the Rebus Foundation.
Excellent. Thanks, Annika. And I have my colleague here, Sarah Simpson. So I'm going to do a quick introduction, hopefully about less than 5 minutes. I'll give it over to Sarah for probably 10, 15 minutes, and then that gives should give 10 minutes for questions. Does that work, Annika and Deb and whoever, and Jenny, whoever else?
That's perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good.
So hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully that'll work without breaking. Excellent. Okay. Thanks, everyone. So again, I'm Hugh. I'm the founder and CEO of Pressbooks. I've actually been working on open content and the web since about 2005. Worked on a number of different projects, and Pressbooks is the one that's really grown into the most exciting one. I also did LibriVox back in the day, which is a free volunteer-driven audiobook project that makes audio recordings of public domain texts and has published thousands and thousands of audiobooks. But we're here to talk about Pressbooks, and Pressbooks really has become the backbone of an open publishing ecosystem in EDU, been around since 2012. 2011, but we were adopted very early on by BC Campus out of British Columbia in Canada as their tool of choice for publishing OER, and they did it because we're open source. We were Canadian, which I think they liked. And we were really committed to the idea that content, educational content, and especially open content should be on the web, as well as in downloadable formats, including PDF, EPUB, and available for print as well. So this is me. I guess if anyone wants to talk to me later, I'm actually wearing the same shirt. Look at that. That's a fluke. And I think what's important is that we've been around for a long time, and we've really become trusted, I think, within this universe of open education publishing. I would say we're category defining in that we were involved with some of the earliest big projects, so SUNY, BC Campus, Lumen Learning, et cetera. And we've grown considerably since then. And Pressbooks is used to help faculty develop, share, adapt, and publish free and openly licensed educational materials, as well as other kinds of content. That's one of the things about Pressbooks, is that while it's been used mainly for OER, in the EDU universe, Pressbooks can be used for private content or different kinds of publishing. So we don't force everything to be open. And I think as institutions think about a future world where there's open content, but also other kinds of content flowing around on campus, that's kind of what we imagine the future look like. So typical one of our clients is Michigan State University Libraries. They've been publishing all sorts of wonderful OER lately. I think it's fair to say they're an advocate of Pressbooks as open infrastructure. And this is really typical. We have a lot of large state schools, but we're doing more work with community colleges and all sorts of other kinds of institutions, excuse me. And we see this future. I think it sort of feels like a lot is happening in open, but we're just getting started. And we see a future where every higher ed institution offers a ubiquitous platform that makes it easy for any faculty to create, adapt, and share free educational materials, with the free in brackets where maybe there's different models there. But we really see ourselves as moving into a space where, complementary to the LMS, there's a platform that anyone can use in higher ed to publish content in a beautiful way on the web in downloadable formats, and again, supporting that open ecosystem. Just a note, we've got about 150 clients in higher ed. The number is probably higher now with a couple of recent agreements we have, but and we're being seen really as an integral part of their teaching and learning programs, an important part of their efforts to support OER. Here's some nice things that people have said about us. And it's something we pride ourselves on, is the values we share with the institutions we work with. And I think if you talk to any clients of Pressbooks, you'll hear the same thing. Here's just a nice map of where we're present. We're mainly in Canada and the US, obviously largely in the US, although we're starting to see growing activity in Australia and Europe as well. Oh, and that's it. So that's just kind of the intro to Pressbooks. And I'm going to turn things over now to Sarah, who can give you a bit of a a tour of Pressbooks and what happens there. So we'll stop sharing. And over to you, Sarah. I don't know if we want to do a quick pause to have any questions there. Or should we just dive in with Sarah? Why don't we dive in with Sarah and leave those 10 minutes at the end for questions?
Sounds good. Thank you, Hugh. I will share my screen and take it away. All right, let's just put this into presentation mode and we'll get going. So thank you, Hugh. He gave a great introduction to what Pressbooks is. When you think of Pressbooks, you can kind of think of Pressbooks, the platform, in 3 different ways. So one, we've got this enormous Pressbooks directory, which is available to you for free to search and discover open educational resources that have been published by our clients. We also have our authoring and editing platform to create and adapt those materials. And then we also have Pressbooks results. And what that is it's the ability to connect your Pressbooks network into your LMS, and all of those books that have H5P activities, you can actually start to build out courseware and use them as assignments and connect those H5P activities into the LMS gradebook. So I'll be showcasing all of these 3 items here for you today. In terms of where we fit in this moment, obviously COVID has pushed everything online. So that has definitely exposed some long-standing challenges that students and faculty have always faced. We really strive to kind of challenge that exorbitant cost of textbooks that's really well in line with the open movement, and the ability to adapt those resources as well. And then in terms of the concerns that everyone has with moving online, we just want to say that we take accessibility very seriously, and we want to make sure that all of the books that we're publishing are available in an accessible way to any students who are using assistive technologies. And we're very cautious about the data if you are connecting into those LMSs, and we do not collect any student data in terms of their records there. So we like to pride ourselves on a very, very safe solution for you guys. So let's dive into what you get with Pressbooks. So with Pressbooks, you can purchase either a central Pressbooks network, which serves multiple institutions. So this is our consortial model. We also offer individual Pressbooks networks that we sell to individual higher ed institutions. Every network will have its own landing page. Pressbooks is built on top of WordPress. So if you're familiar with that platform, this will be very familiar for you. You can create as many pages as you'd like to talk about your program, but this is going to be the space where students can kind of search and discover the material that has been published, and where faculty members and even student authors could potentially sign in to create those materials. So in terms of what you're creating with Pressbooks, you're creating this concept of a web book. Now, because this is kind of a static image, I'm actually just going to click through and open this up so that we can look at it together. And I can kind of click through and show it for you. So every book that you're publishing on Pressbooks, you have the ability to publish it as a web book. So it will have its own URL where students can go to read the book online. You can also surface download options for your readers. So if you want to facilitate offline reading for students who maybe don't always have access to internet, you can surface a number of different offline formats, for example, EPUBs and MOBI files formatted for e-readers. You can also surface PDFs. We have one that's formatted for print, so you could use print on demand services. We also have a file formatted for digital distribution, so it's slightly compressed, so it's a little easier to send over email. And then you can see this author has also surfaced a number of very open formats to facilitate the adaptation of this book by other faculty at other institutions who may or may not have access to Pressbooks. So you get to customize this list. If you don't want to offer any download options, you don't have to, that's up to the author. And you can curate which options are going to be available to your readers. Now the reader can go through and click to read the book. That's going to bring them to the first section of the table of contents here. So they can click through. They still have access to the table of contents over here if they want to skip ahead. So Pressbooks thinks of books in terms of parts and chapters, so I can expand these parts and navigate to the chapter that I would be looking for. If I was curious to find a particular chapter that maybe touches on the topic of stress, I could do a keyword search and pull that up right there and get right into that chapter. I can also see that this instructor is using our glossary tool, which enables you to surface definitions directly on the page so that students can kind of click through and get that information right away. So that's kind of handy there. And then you can also see that this instructor was able to easily embed a YouTube video. So in addition to being able to add media files like YouTube videos and audio files, you can also create H5P activities to add a little bit more interactivity to your book with Pressbooks. This particular instructor created 2 parts at the back of their book for their interactive activities. Now they could have embedded them directly into the chapters themselves, but for their own organizational purposes, they chose to have them at the back of the book. So I'll just click through to show you what a quiz set could look like that was built on H5P. You can customize the image and the styling of this, and then the student can kind of go through and test their knowledge, see if they understood that chapter. So they can go, this instructor has enabled the retry option. So if I were to get an option wrong, I could retry and go back and get the correct answer there. Now, if you had Pressbooks results on top of this, you could connect this into the LMS and start recording your student scores on these activities there. So let's dive back into the presentation here. We just touched kind of briefly on H5P, but every Pressbooks network has the H5P hub built right in so that the faculty members can create an unlimited amount of interactive content. They can also upload content that is already existing from other sources, so they can pull from other OER or from other H5P repositories and pull that content in. And when you upload content, you have the ability to edit it from there. So it's a really cool tool for taking your book one step further. And I think that's one of the big advantages of working with webbooks is being able to make it so dynamic. So you have access to a number of different interactive elements there that you can create. I'm just going to keep an eye on time. I don't want to go too far over. I do want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to skip ahead quickly here. We kind of touched on this with the other book, but I did just want to highlight that you can definitely make your books a lot more interactive when it is a web book. So you can embed audio files, you can embed videos. This is a snapshot of a teacher who's embedded a video of herself teaching the lesson at the beginning of every one of her chapters. And I think that was just a really unique approach to her OER. Next, on the topic of accessibility, we have a plugin built into Pressbooks that enables you to write accessible web-based math notation. So historically, having math notation in online textbooks has sometimes been troubling for students who are using assistive technologies because their screen readers wouldn't pick up on those equations. So we use a tool that enables those screen readers and other assistive technologies to read through and pick up the equations so that they're accessible for students. These equations also have some accessibility settings built into them. So I'm just going to click to open this up and just show you what that looks like. So every formula, I can right click on it, and I've got a few settings I can play around with. Specifically, I can set up zoom triggers. So if I have a hard time seeing those smaller exponents, maybe I'd like to set up a zoom trigger. So in this book, I've already set up a click to zoom with a factor of 200%. So if I just regularly click on any of these equations, they are going to expand for me. I also want to mention that Pressbooks does enable you to kind of navigate the entire book in 200% view. So if any students need to access content in that way, I can show you a little bit what that looks like. Let's get it up to 200. This is also similar to what the mobile view will be. So they still have access to all the controls. They can still go through the table of contents here. And the book is resized to fit the screen there. So that's what they can do with that. This book also has hypothesis enabled, which is something that you can activate on your books to allow for online highlighting and web annotation. So much like how students could take notes in a printed text, this allows them to do it on a web book. So I can see that this has hypothesis because of this right sidebar. So the student can go in, create a free hypothesis account. The nice thing is once they create an account, it keeps them logged in across all of their books, and they can go through and just highlight sections of their text that they would like to take notes on. If they would like to add some comments on a particular section, they can click annotate and add in some notes. You can also use this tool as a form of a discussion board. So if you want students to be able to reply to each other or respond, or maybe link away to other resources that might be helpful, you can set up private groups for the different sections of your classes, which I think is a unique approach to using hypothesis. All right, so let's get back to our presentation here. The next thing I wanted to showcase for you is the Pressbooks directory. So this is where you can go to search and discover a ton of content that has been produced by all of our clients. Right now, we've got about 97 of them who have opted into the directory to showcase some of their work to make it a little bit easier to search and discover. We've put together a few collections for you to peruse. You can just do an easy a keyword search for perhaps a subject or a particular book you might be looking for. And then we've got a number of filters that you can filter by. So if you're looking for books that have a high amount of H5P activities, you could put a minimum of 100 in there and then just start getting all the results from there. So you can see this chemistry text. Let's see if we can click through. Typically it would say the H5P number. Sorry, it didn't for the demo there. But if I were to just click H5P here, it will show the full listing of all of the H5P activities throughout the book. And then I can click through and expand each one to see if I might want to reuse it in my course. All right, and the next great thing about the directory is it allows you to search and discover books that can be adapted and remixed. So anything that is openly licensed here, you could then pull into your Pressbooks network and remix that book. So I'll show you an example of that in the next slide here. So this is an award-winning OER text that has been cloned by probably the most amount of times by our clients. And they were able to do that by simply copying and pasting the link to the book, putting it in here and deciding where they wanted it to live in their network. And I've actually already gone ahead and done this in my account here. So now that I've pulled in that text, here, I'll just show you the dashboard quickly. I've got all of the sections of the book in here. This is what it would look like in the reader's view. So this is what they're going to see online. But as an admin now, I can go in and edit all of the content of this. So in the organized dashboard, I can drag and drop sections to new spots. I can delete sections. I can go in and I can make edits to the content of that section of the book. If I want to make an addition, maybe add an H5P element or add media, I can do whatever I'd like. And when you're cloning a book, it's going to pull over all of that original metadata so that you don't lose those original attributions to the original creators there. And then you can go into the book info and add your name in as someone who contributed and made an addition. All right, so that is cloning. And last, I just wanted to quickly showcase that you can pull this content into your LMS. So I've got an example here of a chapter that's been pulled in using our thin common cartridge export with web links. That's included with kind of all of our base plans. And then you also have the option to do a full LTI integration, which will enable you to securely pull in content as well as connect those H5P activities into the LMS gradebook. So sorry, it looks like my link doesn't work there, but I think we are running very short on time and I want to make sure that there's enough time for questions here. So I think this is perhaps a good moment to pause. Or actually, I think there was one more slide because there was some questions about support. So I just wanted to quickly highlight this before I stop talking. But in terms of the support we offer, we do email support. We host open monthly training webinars that are open to everyone every month. So end users can kind of join to get some training. We also do advanced publishing sessions. We have a network manager training with a private Q&A. And we're also doing, we also have our Pressbooks user guides and our YouTube channel with video tutorials. All right, I'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I look forward to hearing your questions.
Great, thank you so much, Hugh and Sarah. Appreciate that. And it looks like we have one question to start, but please feel free to either put your questions in the chat or go ahead and unmute and ask your question. But Rachel has asked, what LMSs are supported in the Pressbook integrations?
The LMSs that are supported are going to be Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle, D2L, and Brightspace.
Thanks. Rachel, do you have any follow-up on that? Okay. What other questions do we have for the Pressbooks team?
This is Jenny. So we're trying to have a series of conversations with various producers of IT products associated with OER work. And one of the questions that I think is important to understand is what does Pressbooks do that maybe, I don't want to use the word competitor because it tends to be very collaborative in this space, but another platform might not be able to do? What would distinguish it, and why would it be, what would make it the tool of choice?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. I think that Pressbooks has been around for a while, and we've long had a very open approach to standards, and that means that we've collaborated well with other tools. So Hypothesis, MathJax, H5P, all of these things have been built in, and we've really been driven by the needs of particularly the OER community in building out the feature set. So I think if I look at what we offer, it's really control of the publishing process for the institutions. So really you run your Pressbooks network as you like with your users and what books or resources you want to be supporting or not supporting. But I think what's unique about us is that we've really focused on making OER publishing the easiest and most suited for the institutions we're working with. And I'll just turn to Sarah to see if you have any additions there. But it's really, to me, it's about the control that the institutions we work with really have full control, and that we've responded, and our whole sort of DNA is around helping support that kind of educational publishing. And when I look at the others, whether it be Manifold or the others out there, they're looking at different kinds of publishing, but we've really been focused on that educational, open to the web publishing.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary there. What I would say is kind of the biggest edge that we have on our competitors is kind of the breadth of services that we offer. So it's not just an authoring platform. It also enables you to build courseware. It lets you do the integration with your LMS and record those grades. It's an extremely accessible platform as well, not only from the reader's interface, but also from the user's interface. So if you have any instructors or content creators with disabilities, the editing and authoring interface is tremendously compatible with various assistive technologies. Yeah, I would say that's probably the ones that I would highlight there, just in terms of the different features that we have access to. And then I guess the directory would be a big one. You've got this huge directory of content that you can then clone into your network and remix it. So you don't need faculty members to create that content from scratch. There's a really big ecosystem that they can pull from. And if it's an existing Pressbooks book, it becomes even easier because they can just copy and paste the link to the book and automatically pull that content in and get started with their authoring process.
Great. You have two questions in the chat. The first was from Brian. He's asking what the pricing tiers are from Pressbooks.
I can touch on that quickly. So in terms of Pressbooks pricing, we've got a kind of a wide breadth from if you want to just self-publish an individual book without those H5P elements, we've got pricing that starts at $19.99 per book, whereas it kind of scales all the way up to an institutional network with unlimited publishing and Pressbooks results, and that would be FTE based on the size of your school. So we would, if you'd like a formal quote, I can break down all of the pricing, but I would just need FTE numbers in order to build out those tiers for you. And then the other question in there, or Brian, did you have any follow-up before I move on to the next question? All right. And the next one is in terms of the interactive content and how that works offline once it's downloaded. So as you can imagine, you can't click through interactive activities on a PDF or play videos. So what happens in those cases is when you export the formats into those offline versions, what you'll get in place of that H5P activity or that YouTube video is you'll just get a snapshot of it that says, this requires an internet connection in order to interact with this activity, and then it provides the reader with the link. So if they just want to type it into the URL bar when they have access to internet, they'll be able to get redirected directly to that activity so that they can interact with it.
Jenny, am I allowed to change my answer to what our competitive advantage is?
Sure.
I just want to add something because it's a bit new to us, but it's the most exciting thing that's happening is the directory. And I think what the directory highlights is really the network of institutions who are already using Pressbooks and creating content there. And we're really interested in growing the ways in which that can connect different people who might be working on OER across institutions. So we're not there yet, but I see that just kind of the network of existing people and institutions working on Pressbooks as our strongest point right now.
And that's pretty nifty.
Yeah. Thanks. Should have thought of that earlier in when you asked the question. But as I say, it's relatively new. We're just starting to see the bubbling effects of, as more content gets published on that directory, what the implications are, and we're really excited to explore that.
Thank you. So I think we have about 2 minutes remaining with Hugh and Sarah. Any other questions? Again, you're welcome to unmute yourself to ask a question or put your question in the chat. Either one is fine. And we will, of course, share this recording. And if Hugh and Sarah would be kind enough to share their slides with me as well, I can share that link out with everyone after the meeting as well. Oh, okay. You have a question about why is there a 1,500 word minimum for what's included in the directory?
I'll take that. So as I mentioned, the directory is relatively new. And when we first started pulling in content, we had things like test book number 1 by John Smith, and test book number 2 by John Smith, and test book number 3 by John Smith, with one chapter that said, hello, does this work? And that's because in the earlier days when there was no directory, you could write whatever you wanted on Pressbooks, but it wasn't getting surfaced really anywhere. So we did a number of filters that said, if it says test book in the title, we don't index it. If there are just 1,500 words, that generally our assessment was there wasn't much of value to anyone else. So those are the reasons. And that's an interesting question. Is there other options for smaller stuff like this? I think this is something that we might, if we start seeing more interest in that kind of content, we can find ways to filter more effectively than doing it that way. But we haven't seen much demand. But one of the things that, again, because of the network, I know we're at time, but is that we're very responsive to our clientele. I have a coworker just entered the room secretly here.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both very much. We really appreciate your time coming to talk with our group. We will, again, share the materials and recording, and I'm sure folks will follow up if they have specific requests or would like, a more thorough demo or things like that. But we really appreciate you joining us today.
Okay. Thanks for the invite, and thanks all for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, great. So we have a brief time now between presenters. If you want to have any discussion about what we heard or any thoughts, or if there are any questions you'd like us to sort of, put together and send back to them, for them to answer offline, I'm happy to do that. And then our next presenter will be joining us at 4:45 or 3:45 Central. So feel free to unmute yourselves. Let me know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, I guess I can start. I thought it was interesting. You know what I mean? The presentation. I happen to be fairly familiar with LibreText. There's a lot of similarities, and I don't know if Pressbooks realizes, that LibreText has some of the same features and things. And so I'll be curious to see, on how LibreText presents. And if you ask, I'll ask the question if someone else doesn't ask the question, because I'm curious to see what Delmar says. I guess, and things about what he thinks is different in LibreText versus Pressbooks. But I guess from a consortium, I'd be curious to feel out Pressbooks on what's their thought on consortial sort of pricing. Because they want to do things by FTE, but from a consortial perspective, it's going to be hard for you guys to give them FTEs. You know what I mean? That you're going to pursue from a consortial perspective. And so I don't know how they exactly try to handle that sort of ask, if that's something that they're approached about.
I know that they have some deals with certain states. So that would, indicate that they're not doing it strictly on FTE.
So we're almost signed a contract with them. It's almost done at Minnesota State. And we went with the Pressbooks EDU version. The standard version is already a statewide subscription through Minitex, another consortium who deals a lot with public libraries, but they weren't comfortable handling the subscription for the academic use. So we're doing that. And what we ended up with was a 30 title. We were not sure how much people were going to use it. So we ended up with a 30 title subscription for the entire system, which is 37 institutions for us. And then I think our price, our stuff is public information. So it's $15,000 is what we're paying for the year. And then we also negotiated they'll tell you that there's a basic package. They don't want to include the LTI. They don't want to include the authentication integration, unless you're a full institution subscription, but we negotiated that in really easily. They didn't buck about that at all. And we're all on the same LMS, so that made it easier as well. So that's where we are as far as Minnesota. And then we also have the option that people can opt in for a full institution subscription, and that's based on FTE. Our particular negotiation was not based on FTE at all.
And so a full institution, so that'd be like if they want the LTI, is that what you're kind of describing?
Yeah, if they want the LTI, if they want unlimited books for their institution. Yeah, and we do have one institution that is waiting for the contract to get signed so that they can do the add-on, but we're also going to make that available beyond Minnesota State, and that will be available for private academic institutions as well to get in on that contract. And they were fine with that too.
Right, and with that, it was it's going to be branded with Minnesota State, not the individual institutions within Minnesota State. If that makes sense. It's going to be more at the system level, and that's part of the packaging. So.
And I see some notes in the chat too, that North Dakota has been, University of North Dakota has been working with LibreText, or starting to work with LibreText, and Maricopa Community Colleges has been using Pressbooks EDU. Sorry, Jonathan, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, so one of the advantages I think also of Pressbooks is that it's all open source. So if it has a kind of, if some institution builds a lot of resources in did I say Pressbooks? But Pressbooks, if you build a lot of resources, then you may think, well, I have to keep paying them forever to keep this repository going. But in theory, you could migrate to a self-hosted solution, and they're very welcoming to self-hosted people. So for example, if you have a self-hosted Pressbooks instance, you have all the most up-to-date version of the software, and they will index your books in the Pressbooks directory as well. So it offers a future that, it requires more institutional technical commitment, but it's a way to keep on with lower costs.
Thanks for noting that, Jonathan. I think that is important as you consider sustainability of different tools.
I don't know. I don't know if I could say, I don't know if you can say lower costs though. You know what I mean? Because it is a company. You know what I mean? I guess versus a more consortial sort of model. And so it might be lower cost. I think it's going to depend on how they set up pricing structure and things, and what kind of the expectations are. You know what I mean? That institutions and authors want from the tool.
Any other thoughts or things folks want to share? Any follow-up questions you'd like us to pose to them?
Or, I mean, I guess the other thing I'd share, K-State, we have both. We're a LibreNet member and we have Pressbooks. You know what I mean? And so there's certain options that we offer them, you know what I mean, to our authors, and we talk to them about maybe for your specific sort of purpose, this might be a good sort of fit for you. If you want a lot of interactivity, LibreText might be something that you want to use depending on where your discipline is, I guess, and things. And so we kind of talk them through. But one of the things that's happened, at least at our institution here recently, though, is we're kind of starting to set an expectation that you need to use one of them, I guess now, versus, people wanting to use like Word documents and things now. It's like, hey, PDFs, it's not really cutting it, for us anymore, I guess, and things. And so I'd say that's something from an evolutionary perspective that we're starting to see now, because there's so much power in either of them, that use one of them, I guess, and things. And I think you'll be far better off than how things have been done in the past.
Great. Thanks, Brian. That's really great to consider.